Hi, I'm Paul Egger, Vice President of Governmental Affairs for the Minnesota Realtors.
And I'm Ryan Hamilton, Associate Legal Counsel for the Minnesota Realtors.
Welcome to this week's legislative update. All right, we have a lot of updates this week. We're heading into the final stretch of the legislative session, which will end by May 21st, and we're sure they're going to go up to the very last minute. Starting with taxes, previously we've talked about the governor's tax proposal and the House tax proposal. This week the attention was on the Senate, and on the floor on Thursday the Senate debated the Senate Republican tax bill, and that bill passed off the floor. In some ways it's similar to the governor's proposal in terms of the federal conformity piece. The Senate preserves all of the previous deductions that we had in the tax code prior to the enactment of the Federal Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So those home ownership tax deductions that we're familiar with, such as mortgage interest deduction, home equity interest deduction, your property tax deduction, those would all remain intact. And that's the way the governor's bill was. And as we discussed previously, the House bill conforms to many of the changes that the federal tax bill made to deductions, the limiting and the repeal of many deductions in the tax code. So the next step is for conference committees to be named and for the Senate, the House, and the governor to begin negotiating a final tax bill. So we'll be part of that process. We've offered testimony every step of the way, communicating the importance of homeownership tax benefits in Minnesota's tax code. This week we also had another committee hearing in the House on the Property Assessed Clean Energy Loan, the PACE Consumer Protections Bill that we've been working on with our coalition partners. This was the 11th committee hearing between the Senate and the House, which is a number of committee stops that I've never experienced with any bill I've worked on over the years. So this bill has received a lot of vetting. We're anticipating a Senate floor debate on the bill on Monday. So that'll be another step in the process, and then the last step would be House consideration before sending it to the governor. Finally, an amendment came up this week in the House during the floor debate on the Health and Human Services budget bill that would have required mandatory well testing at property transfer. This is an amendment based on a bill the governor had proposed earlier in the session that never received a hearing. We raised a number of concerns on that, and it did move forward as a separate bill. So Ryan and I went into action, and we're talking to legislators in the House about that amendment, and ultimately the author of the amendment decided not to offer it, so it was not attached to the Health and Human Services bill. Now I'm going to turn over to Ryan for a few more updates.
Hi folks. So the action at this time of year over at the Capitol has pretty much shifted from the committee rooms to the Capitol building itself and the House and Senate floors. One bill that we've been tracking dealing with that would allow for a remote notarization in Minnesota, that came out of Ways and Means onto the floor. And so now that our perspective is on the floor, when Paul and I are watching bills being debated, what we're really looking for is amendments. And along those lines, we were watching the House version of the Omnibus Supplemental Budget Bill, which included some state government finance provisions, jobs provisions. The amendments that came up on that bill, Representative Sundin offered an amendment that would have stripped out the rulemaking review provisions that we've been working on with the builders this year. So fortunately that amendment was voted down, and that provision remains in the bill. Also, Representative Sarah Anderson added an amendment that would have included, or that ultimately wound up including, language dealing with restrictive racial covenants on titles and deeds on properties. So that bill was offered and added on a unanimous vote. So again, we continue to watch amendments as bills are debated on the House and Senate floors. Thanks.